Hello. Welcome to episode number 5 of the People We Love podcast. I am Adam Choate. Hope you guys enjoyed those first few episodes. Thank you so much for listening. Hope you guys are all well. I gotta say, I really don't like doing these intros and these outros, but they're necessary. I don't know why I just like doing them, but I guess I just do. But that's okay. I really don't like doing social media and the marketing and all that stuff. That's not my favorite part. But I really do like recording, and editing is pretty fun, and meeting all kinds of people and meeting up with all kinds of people. That's the cool part. But anyway, back to the intro itself. So, she's been a coworker, a friend, and she is an extraordinary woman. That's author and TV producer Celia Bonaduce. And that's who I'll be talking today about her father, who was a legendary TV writer himself, who worked on Dick Van Dyke and with Norman Lear and has all kinds of amazing credits. I don't have all that much to add to this little setup here, so without further ado, my interview with Celia Bonaduce about her father, Joseph Bonaduce. Well, it's good to see you today, Celia. Thank you for coming down to the studio.
My pleasure. I'm happy to see what you've got going on here.
Yeah, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Nobody can see us, but I have very short hair right now because I am on the other side of going through a little breast cancer thing, and it was a little breast cancer thing. Yeah,
it's just a little thing.
But when I got the bad news of having breast cancer, that sucked. But from there on, I've had all good news. So I'm looking forward to a new year and longer hair.
Yeah.
And good health. Sadly, in that order.
Yeah, we're recording this in late December, but this will be released sometime in January. So it will be the new year by the time people hear this, and we'll see what your hair looks like.
Right.
It's all about the hair.
It's sadly all about the hair. It's amazingly all about the hair.
Did you use any wigs or anything like that when you just kind of covered it up a little bit?
It's really funny because you just go through all this stuff that I don't know if it's avoidance, because you have cancer. You've got this horrible thing going on in your body, and you're thinking, what fashion statement do I want to make with my head?
In some way, that's kind of a distraction almost from the suffering. It's because it gives you decisions to make that are not
that are within your control.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
You're not thinking bigger, more dark questions inside your head.
I didn't do a wig because the thing about wigs to me is that I always felt like it would be like, there is Celia with other hair.
Yeah.
So I decided I did all kinds of, turbans and scarves.
That was more fun and more interactive, I imagine, than...
Yeah.
And plus it was kind of a short-term thing. If you're going to have a long-term solutions, then you'll have...
Maybe.
People have probably closets of wigs and hats and scarves and all kinds of stuff. But anyway, we're not here to talk about wig mastery or any of that. We're here to talk about who?
We are here to talk about
you tell me.
My father, my lovely, well, not lovely, but my very interesting...
Oh, man.
Genius father, who was probably is even though he has passed 10 years ago, pretty much my mentor for writing.
Did you say you had another mentor as well?
I do. I have a woman bestseller every time she puts out a book. A woman named Jodie Thomas. She writes romance novels, and as a writer, to just even look at her success astounds me. She sells 10,000 books a day on the day her new books come out.
Wow.
Yeah.
We'll have you with, who's we? Me, I will have you. I'm we now. I don't know who that is. We, me and my producer, my alter ego. Right. No, we will have you back on.
Great.
To talk about her.
About Jodie.
But we'll talk about Pops today. It's funny how you said that, the first thing you say is he's a writing mentor and he's interesting.
Yeah.
This is going to be an interesting conversation, I think. It's not that he was a great dad, not that he pushed me on the swing when I was younger or did those kinds of things. Well, we'll get into that, but it's interesting that he was first and foremost, it sounds like that he was a career mentor.
Yes, absolutely. He was a very complex man. I think in today's society, we would suspect that he was bipolar.
Yeah.
Back in the day, we just suspected he was Italian. It's like the emotions were all over the place. But he, first of all, he taught me just so much about writing that when I am writing, I just cannot believe how much it seems like it's almost in my DNA.
Yeah.
And it
might be.
Yeah. He took a real active role from the time I was like 10. And I never said, hey, I want to be a writer. But it was just like something that he always, like, God forbid you should turn in a school assignment without showing it to him. And you'd write up your...
Really? Every assignment?
Every assignment. And this is not a man who took interest in our lives all-encompassing. He wasn't that kind of...
What about other subjects in school besides writing or English? Was he checking your math homework, or was he only checking your...
No. He only checked things that were of interest to him.
Right. I see what's going on here. That's like how sometimes, I'll buy a gift for someone else, but it's really for me because when I visit their apartment or something like that. Yeah. I gotcha. So he was born I'm looking in front of me here, in Jessup, Pennsylvania.
Yes, which is
in the 20s.
Coal mining town up by Scranton. And actually, anything that involves my father involves like an amazing story. And I'll very quickly tell you.
Yeah, we'll do a little bit of chronology of his bio, like before you came into existence, and then we'll catch up to your experiences with him for sure. But you were saying coal mining town.
Yes, a little coal mining town. My grandfather, who was actually born in the United States, but his family took him back to Italy. They were Italian immigrants.
You're full Italian. Have you done?
On my dad's side.
On your dad's side. Okay.
Yes. Well, yes. I mean, this
on your mom's side is
mostly Irish.
Okay.
Irish. On my dad's side is Italian, and we found out my generation is 8% sub-Saharan African, which was a surprise when we found out, although everybody does harken back to Africa.
Sure.
But, there's always that saying about Southern Italy is a rowboat ride away from Africa.
Yeah.
And
Northern Africa, though.
Yeah, Northern Africa. Yes. Northern Africa, not Sub-Saharan. But
that's a longer boat ride.
Yeah, that is a much longer boat ride. But my grandmother had, she had a great, like, I have slim hips. She had rounded hips. I've got really thin lips. She had gorgeous full lips. And it was like, once we found out, like, we had this African blood, it was like, well, how come I didn't get any of that stuff?
Oh, no. Am I going to have to edit any of this?
No, because I would have loved to have had her.
Yeah. I just did it, actually. I just did the 23andMe. I'm waiting my results. They should be coming in.
It's really interesting. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun.
I just spent all this money for them to tell me that I'm Eastern European Ashkenazi Jew, basically.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
There's usually it's pretty much what you think, but there's always a little surprise in there, which is always
they make it up because they want it. They know people want to hear a surprise. They want to be something. Maybe. Everyone wants to be something they're not, or they don't think they are.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. Yeah. So anyway, Jessup, Pennsylvania, coal mining.
Okay, right. So my grandfather had been born in America, but his parents took him back to Italy. Then he decided to come back to America when he was 16, but he didn't have to do the whole immigration thing.
This is your grandfather.
My grandfather. So he didn't have to do any of the immigration stuff because he was an American citizen, even though he was only here till he was 2 years old. So he just decided to come back to America and did. He went to stay with some relatives in Philadelphia who couldn't afford to keep him and said, well, what do you want to do? He said, I want to be a cowboy. And they said, okay. And they gave him money and they wrote, because he didn't speak English, and they wrote on a piece of paper, Wyoming, and took him to the train station. And he gave the ticket guy this piece of paper that said Wyoming.
Yeah.
And the ticket guy gave him a ticket to Wyoming, Pennsylvania.
Oh, no.
And the rest literally is history. I mean, he went.
So oh my God. So this is like the Is this the 19th century?
Yeah. This is like 1922.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah,
it's your
yeah.
even it's your grandfather. Okay.
Yeah.
So he ended up in Wyoming, PA.
Yeah, which is the coal mining region, and
Well, Columbus didn't go to the right place
exactly.
either. So you never know what you're gonna find. So he ended up just settling in this Wyoming, Pennsylvania.
and he became a coal miner. And he was, in this.
What about his cowboy dreams?
Well, no cowboy dreams.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, my dad got the dreams, not the grandfather.
That's true.
So my grandfather. Nowadays, you'd need a degree for what my grandfather did, which was he was very tiny. He was like 5 feet tall, and he could crawl in little places in these mines. So you'd get extra money and set dynamite.
Yeah, you needed some kind of licensing or something. Yeah.
Right. So, but in those days, you just needed to be small and willing to set.
I miss those days when I could walk into the general store and buy my own dynamite.
Yeah, exactly.
The good old days.
So anyway, that's how the coal mining thing happened. My father was born there, and apparently, it was very, very clear, very, very early that my father was a genius and something special.
Really?
Yeah, and it was one of those things that my grandpa.
How old was when he was?
Probably 6.
Yeah, and he was just a creative genius, just writing and creating.
And
what was he doing?
I don't know because I wasn't there. But he was, my family was very tiny, the Italian side of my family. So he's very, very small to begin with. And he skipped 3 grades. So there's a picture of him in like the 7th grade. And he's
the smallest person ever.
The smallest. I mean, he was probably...
But he was younger.
He was younger.
I was one of on the shorter side in my, in most of the grades.
Yeah.
But I was not. Yeah. I was not younger. Yeah. I was not an advanced short genius, young genius.
He was a short young genius.
Did he go around telling anybody? No, I'm not 15. I'm 12, but I'm a genius.
Yeah, I don't think It was a very small town, and apparently he didn't have to tell anybody.
They knew.
They knew. Yeah, he said he was known as the smartest boy in town.
Wow.
Yeah.
Damn. So he was just showing this in terms of like he would be writing and just getting amazing
and
grades.
Art, he did art.
Yeah.
He was a great artist. As a matter of fact, this is
Was he writing symphonies?
No.
Not yet. Not at 6 years old, 10 years old.
He never did any music, and it broke his heart because he wanted to be a musician. He wanted to be able to sing. He wanted to do art.
Well, doesn't everyone?
And he couldn't sing at all. And which is really funny because everybody in my generation, my brothers and I, all sing. My mother has a beautiful voice, and he was just the odd man out.
That's funny. Yeah. Interesting. Maybe there's a reason that he gravitated towards these people.
And he also he painted some, and I thought he was really good. I still have some of his watercolors, and I asked him one time why he never pursued that. And he said, because I would never be great.
Yeah.
He said, I really didn't have any interest in pursuing something where I wouldn't be great.
But that was an assumption. Because if he really wanted it and would take the time, there's a chance that he could be great.
Yes.
He didn't want to people don't want to take the time. That's how I am with like video games. I don't want to take the time to be great at them.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're fun, but like you have to spend so much time just to become competent, let alone great.
Well, I think he also...
It was a hobby.
Yeah. And I think he felt more assured. I think he was more sure of himself with his writing than with his art. And I don't think, and this is just psychoanalyzing him on the spot because I've never really thought about this before, but I think he probably just wanted to stick with something where he had all the confidence.
Yeah.
Rather than going out on a limb.
It's like a catch-22. It's like everyone wants to do something they're great at, but to become great at something you have to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
But some of these things sound like they came somewhat naturally to him. Well, I'm sure he cultivated his gifts.
He did. He worked hard. He worked really hard at writing, and that was one of the things why I consider him my writing mentor more than my mother. My mother and father wrote together. But my father imparted stuff.
Yeah, what was your mother's name again?
Elizabeth, and she's still around.
Cool.
Yeah.
So What about your father through when he was in his adolescence, teen years into college or whatever? What was he like in those times that you heard of him?
Pretty much the same.
Still the smartest kid in school.
Smartest kid in town. Very volatile. Was always, getting into fights.
Why?
I think, again, psychoanalyzing him, which may not be fair, but, we're talking a real Napoleon complex.
Sure.
He was always fighting bigger men because that's all everybody was bigger. And he was always, until he was in his 50s, he would get in fights with people, physical fights.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm hoping to get in one at some point. That's on my bucket list. Like a real bar fight.
But he lost.
No weapons, just fist. He
lost
always
all
lost.
The time. He lost all the time.
And what happened to him when he lost? Did he get
nothing?
No, I mean, did he get bruises or punched him?
Cut lip.
Cut lip.
Whatever.
What's the worst thing that ever?
Oh, I don't. I mean, it was never really bad. It was usually.
I'm always afraid,
scuffle.
I'll lose teeth or...
Yeah, you'd think. And my dad was super handsome, too. So the fact that he would fight was weird. Because you'd think he'd want to...
Was he a drinker?
No.
No, he's not even drinking and he's fighting people.
And he's fighting. He's this big deal. I mean, this is flat, zooming forward. But he's a very big deal television writer at this point and would literally be fighting, would challenge people in the room.
Wow.
Yeah, he was...
I would not accept the challenge.
Yeah.
I would be intimidated that there was one. I like my fights to happen organically. If you say something or I do something, then, it happens, it's going to happen. But a guy walks in the room and says, who wants to fight? Yeah. He's like, it's like some Hemingway stuff or something like that.
Totally.
It's crazy. What's prompted these fights? Somebody saying something?
Yes. Yes, something somebody
And
said.
It was probably something trivial and unimportant, but it just rubbed him the wrong way.
It would be...
Did it have to be something personal?
No.
If you're fighting all the time, it can't.
It wasn't. It was never personal. It was something big. It was either, if he was fighting, if he wanted to fight a fellow writer, it would be something about, he would be, a perfect example would be, he'd be pitching an idea. And people in these, comedy rooms, they're all funny and they're all throwing out jokes. And he would be getting madder and madder that they were interrupting his story and interrupting his flow and going the wrong way with the story.
Yeah, creative differences.
Exactly.
So a lot of his fights were with other writers and creative people?
Yes. And he also...
In the workplace?
Yes. He actually...
you can't... I don't think you can get away with that.
No, you can't.
That's probably good.
He wouldn't have a job now. Nobody would put up with it now.
Yeah.
But he
would have figured it. I feel like not to cut you off. He would have figured it out and then join a kickboxing gym or something, or a fancy gym where him and his other writer friends can get out there.
So different. Everything would be different. You can't act like he acted. On the other hand, if he was bipolar, there would have been ways to handle this stuff that wasn't. And really, everybody's just like, oh, Joe, that's Joe. I mean, even he was in Norman Lear's office one time, and one of these things happened. And it wasn't a fight, but my dad was really angry, and he took Norman Lear's phone, took the phone, and started banging it on the receiver, just bang, 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 and he banged the phone so much that a ceiling panel fell out
above the ceiling.
Yeah, and Norman Lear's like, Joe, you just can't act like this.
That's legendary.
Yeah.
That's it's funny because I pictured the banging of the phone. I'm like, below the floor, maybe above.
Above.
I didn't even think such a thing was.
But it was really funny because he had this circle of really tight, amazing friends. I mean, the whole Norman Lear gang, including Norman Lear, and
he's still alive.
Yeah,
he's still working. I think.
Yeah.
Wow, that guy's.
And they just put up with him. They just put up with him because he was
that talented.
He was that good.
When you're that good and you're that talented, there's special rules. God, I wish I was like that.
Yeah.
I'm not like that. I have to be nice to everyone. No, that's not fun.
Yeah. No, in this day and age, I think my father would have just been just one lawsuit after another.
Well, you know what? Then he can, tweet out his apology.
Right.
I want to announce I'm bipolar. I'm getting help. And then, then you have your second career, your third career. I don't know. I guess at some point you can't. There's only so many times you could apologize or whatever. Did he fight other people besides writers, or mostly just writers?
Mostly just writers. And it wasn't like that was a huge thing that he always came home having been in a fight. But every couple months there'd be like he'd come home and there'd be like he had a fight.
And it just became normal.
It was completely normal
because you knew you couldn't stop it. Did you ever try to talk?
No,
did anyone ever pull him aside and be like, "Come on, what the hell are you doing? You're a grown man."
I'm sure my mother did.
Yeah.
But, when you're a kid, your life is your life. And nothing seems completely weird.
Right.
So when he'd come home and he'd like have a black eye or a cut lip or whatever, you just go, "Oh, Dad had a fight." But
your dad is very different from my dad. I will say that.
He always picked the fight, and we always knew that. We always knew that he picked the fight.
Did he ever not?
I mean, I never.
Yeah.
I never.
That would have been. It's not even a forefront memory if it happened because it's always him picking it.
I mean, he fought with my brothers all the time, and he picked those fights. As a matter of fact,
physical fights with your brothers, like angry fights, or like really.
Yeah. And the thing is, what happened?
And they're all short too.
No, I have one brother who's 6 feet tall.
Yeah,
and it was like
it doesn't matter to your dad
anyway. It was just like
anyway.
in your dad, and my poor brother Anthony. Anthony's the tall one, and he'd be just like, "Dad, please stop." Holding him away, please stop. But my dad would always pick the fights. But as a perfect example of the kind of thing my father would fight about, is one time he had said to my oldest brother John, he was probably in his 50s, it'd be my guess, and he said, I feel like I don't have any new opinions, and I'm turning to stone. And
that's what
my father said.
Your father said that
to my brother.
And how old's your brother at this time?
Oh, so he'd be 30. So they're adults. Everybody's
30,
an adult.
and your dad is
50
something. Okay.
Something in there. And then my dad, one of his favorite things was everything that's wrong with our lives and society is because of the Industrial Revolution.
Really?
Yeah.
I would argue the opposite, actually.
So he says to my brother, but we've all heard this a billion times.
Yeah.
And he says, and they're in a Chinese restaurant, and my dad says, everything's wrong with the world because of the Industrial Revolution. And my brother, thinking, well, I'll try and jar Dad out of his I've turned stone and have no new thoughts. He goes, well, Dad, what if you consider that the Industrial Revolution started with the invention of the wheel?
Yeah. That's a troll comment, but okay.
And my dad leapt across the table, started pounding on my brother, going, don't you mock me.
Yeah, no, I could picture that because, he gets offended by sarcasm that you don't think he's going to get.
Yes.
But he knew that was an insult.
Yes. So that's that story in a nutshell is not who my dad was, but who my dad, when he was feisty and fighting, that's the kind of thing. It would be that kind of, there'd be some obscure comment that would set him off, and he would take it to mean he had to go to war.
I want to debate your dad about the Industrial Revolution. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do that.
No.
But on the phone, not in person.
Right.
And I want him to not know my location.
Right.
If the conversation goes south, which it would if it's a debate that I'm on the opposite side of.
Yeah.
But that's funny. That's pretty funny, old man.
He was something.
So did he go to college or technical training?
Yes.
How did he end up in Los Angeles? Obviously, we're still in Pennsylvania in the coal mines.
Okay, so he's this genius kid. My grandparents decide we've got to get him out of the coal mines. He cannot be a coal miner. Did
he work in the coal mines at all?
Never.
Not in high school or a summer job or something?
No, he was allowed to pick coal, and I'm not even sure what that means.
Yeah.
But he was allowed to pick coal outside of the mine.
Yeah,
there was slag heaps. He was allowed to pick coal and put it in a wagon and bring it home, but that was all. But he was not allowed to go in the mines. So by the time he was in high school, they'd moved down towards Philadelphia, and I think my grandfather got a job in a factory somewhere. But my father got drafted at the end of World War II. The World War was over, but he was in the occupation of, he went to Germany.
Okay.
So when he came back, of course, now he's got the GI Bill and can go to college. So he went to Temple University, where he met my mother. Mm-hmm. And both of them are Temple graduates. And then he started working got a very twisty family history. My father started working for my mother's father, so my grandfather on my mother's side, who was in broadcasting in Philadelphia and was kind of a big deal.
And that I feel like this is probably the start of everything getting into entertainment.
So my grandfather discovered Dick Clark for American Bandstand, which was in Philadelphia. Really?
He discovered Dick Clark?
Yes.
For American Bandstand?
For American Bandstand.
Because Dick Clark was on the radio?
And there's some story that I don't actually know. I've heard it a million times, but of course I heard it as a kid and it went out of my head. There was somebody who was on American Bandstand before Dick Clark, and I think he got in some kind of trouble, and they needed another host right away.
I feel like I heard this story before.
Yeah. And then my grandfather, who was in charge of, he's an executive at this radio and TV, WFIL TV. My grandfather said, there's this kid, Dick Clark. He's got the most amazing voice and he's handsome. Let's just get him. Let's just put him on. He'll be fine. And of course, Dick Clark was American Bandstand. Yeah. So then my dad started working for American Bandstand, which was not a good fit.
That was his first Hollywood
kind of.
And that was in
Philadelphia.
American Bandstand was shot in Philadelphia.
Started there, yeah.
Where did it eventually
It came here. That's how we got here. My dad was working for American Bandstand.
And the show moved.
The show moved.
Yeah, I had no idea that was in Philly. I guess is it just because a lot of the music was based out of that, Philly soul music or something?
Who knows why?
But that was before then. This was. Yeah. I guess it's maybe around
60s.
Yeah.
Yeah, 60s, 70s, 60s.
No, there's a lot of music coming out of there.
So but my father was not a big fan of modern music. Was not a fan of teenagers. Was not a good.
Oh no! What was he doing? Just
He was a producer. He was a producer. I don't know what he did exactly because I was a little kid.
Yeah.
And so he came out with Dick Clark and I will preface this with saying Dick Clark he's now deceased too, was an amazing friend to our family, a loyal friend till the day he died. He came to my dad's funeral. He was a wonderful man to our family. However, he did fire my father within a month after we got out here. But I'm sure he had to. My father was a very difficult man.
Yeah, you didn't have to. Yeah. You didn't have to preface that by saying Dick Clark is a wonderful man, despite him firing my father. Based on everything we've talked about your dad so far, it's a miracle that Dick Clark didn't fire your dad on before lunch on the first day.
Exactly. So that's how we got here. And my dad, the reason we came here.
You were already born at this point.
Yeah, I was born. Yeah.
How old were you when you moved from?
This is a weird thing because my family's life was very bohemian. And so when we moved here, we as kids didn't have to live here all the time. I lived all of us, except for Danny, who lived out here most of the time because he was doing the Archer's family. But my other brothers and I, sometimes we lived in Philadelphia with my aunt. Sometimes we lived
What about
here.
School and things like that?
We went to two different schools. We went to public school out here. We went to Catholic school back there.
And we just seamlessly were able to go from one to the next, and you enjoyed moving. You were like that kind of freedom.
And I realize now as an adult that was a lot of moving parts for the adults in our life because they had to set us up at both schools.
How many kids was
4?
4. Yeah, that's work.
And we were always I don't know when I know that I lived in California full time when I got my driver's license. But between the time that I was 5 and almost 16, I was back in.
But this sounds like something that you and your siblings wanted, though.
Yes, we did. We did.
Is it almost that this is just me guessing, but it sounds like if your parents are both writers and working in this crazy business, that they were quite busy. Yes. And they were not able to dedicate the time and attention to you guys that you guys maybe. Not either wanted or needed, but it just became the normal, and you're like,
it just became the norm, and it was just
they let you do what you want.
What we wanted. I mean, my mom paid great attention to us, but it was more if you started feeling like your friends didn't really like you anymore, if you had and you just go, I'm going to just go stay with Aunt Jackie this semester.
Yeah.
And my mom would be like, oh, I miss you, but okay. And off we'd go.
Yeah, that's my next question. So your parents, they were totally fine with her. They knew you'd be back in their life. Do you have similar personalities to your siblings, or are you guys all very different?
We're all, I would say, we obviously have our differences.
Sure.
You would know that we were all related. Absolutely. If we were all in a room, you'd go, they're siblings.
Yeah, because of the red hair,
yeah.
for one thing.
Yeah. Yeah, but, we all have like a similar sense of humor. We all have similar interests. We're all glib. I love that word.
Sure.
And yeah, you would know. Except I have one really tall brother. Except from that, and even though if we're all sitting down, you'd know because we all look kind of the same.
Cool. So what happened after your father got fired by Dick Clark at American Bandstand?
It's funny because my dad was actually ready to throw in the towel and go, okay, well, this didn't work out. Let's go back to Philadelphia.
And what would he do there?
Who knows? But he felt like he had more contact. He
could do anything he wanted.
Yeah, and he had a lot of jobs over the years. He was the public relations director for the Philadelphia Zoo. He was on TV on a kids show, Uncle Joe from the Philadelphia Zoo. He wrote a TV show for kids called Diver Dan in Philadelphia. He was a photographer for the city in Philadelphia.
Did he do a lot of on-camera stuff as well?
Yeah.
Obviously, you said he did the...
the kids show. He looked like a really tiny Clark Gable. I mean, he was very handsome.
Yeah, we'll put up some pictures on the social media when we put this out there for sure for people to see and all that. Interesting. So he went from, where did you say he went from? He went from Dick Clark to
that was the thing. It was like maybe we should go back.
Oh yeah.
And my mom was like, no, we shouldn't go back. We came out here to. The ultimate goal was to be television writers, and she said we came out here to do that and. We should give it a go. And my dad, because this was now the early 70s, I think.
Yeah.
And my mom, I mean, in this day and age, you can't even imagine this. I can't even imagine it, and I was there. She just kind of like, she was his full writing partner, but she never went to meetings. He just went. So he's got like tons more credits than she does, even though she wrote them.
So she worked from home, and
they both worked from home. But he took the meetings, so he went and took.
So there wasn't really, if he was working in television, there wasn't a TV room in the same way there is today.
No, not at all.
People just go off on their own, and then they have some meetings, and they go over.
And then you go back and you write, and then you would deliver the script because. Did your
mom ever, say, I want to go to meetings?
No. She never did.
That's just some traditional patriarchy, whatever kind of.
Yeah, I mean, they ended up getting divorced. But before they got divorced, she was, yes, I want to go to meetings. And we have different opinions about this because she remembers my dad saying, no, you can't go.
Yeah.
And I do not have that memory. I have a memory of him saying, yeah, sure.
You know what I bet it was? I bet it was that this is me psychoanalyzing that your dad sort of, he wanted to be the dominant and control whatever person and get more glory, whatever the case may be. So part of him probably said, I don't want her to be there. It's more, it benefits me, personally more. But he never would say that.
Well, first of all,
he never would say it, but she could probably tell that he didn't want her to be there.
First of all, there's not a thought my father ever had that he didn't say.
Okay, so I guess I'm yeah.
But I mean, I just feel because he was, he had a very generous side, and I mean, he was very generous with teaching all of us how to write, as I say, Mom and I have very different memories of this. I remember him going, I remember specifically him saying, well, if you want credit, you have to come to meetings. And she was, she was busy. She was doing she was raising the entire family and this and that. And she was, I always tell people I was raised by Napoleon and Blanche Dubois. So you've got my dad, who's like this incredibly focused, intense human being, and my mother relying on the kindness of strangers. She was very, also very, very, very smart and a very, very good writer, but a little scattered and
more, maybe even more well-rounded.
Oh, well, yes, but that didn't take much. Anybody was more well-rounded than my dad.
That stinks though for your mom that she.
It was.
That's probably incredibly painful to deal with that.
It is painful.
To not get credit for.
Yes, it's very
the
painful.
work. It's it's the hours and hours and hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you want.
Yeah, it was
to be recognized.
And to this day, it pinches her. It bothers her. But what happened was he decided, and again, this is something we can't even imagine anything being this crazy loose. They decide together that they want to write for Dick Van Dyke. The Dick Van Dyke Show is like the #1 show. The humor is my parents' humor. They think they can do a good job. Well, my dad drives to the studio. I think it was Universal. I don't remember it for sure because I wasn't there. But he drives to the studio and he parks the car outside the gate and he walks up, and the guard seems to think that my dad is somebody he knows.
You know what it is? Because it's how you dress. If you dress and you walk like you belong, people will let you in.
So
places.
we let my dad in. And my dad just walked into the office. And he was talking to Bensfield and Grant, who were also now both deceased, who were the head writers of the Dick Van Dyke Show. My dad goes in and sees them. I mean, I guess it wasn't even a secretary. I don't know. But he walks in and he meets Bensfield and Grant. And they go, well, you really, that's not the way it goes. Is there's a writers guild.
That's what they said to him.
Yeah, you can't just walk in here and pitch it, because I'm sure they're going, what the hell?
Yeah.
So my dad goes, can I just give you one idea? I'll give you one idea.
Yeah.
And if you don't like it, I'll leave. And they go, okay, fine.
Yeah.
And so he tells them this idea, which was Laura and Rob have a party and Rob's watch gets stolen. And they have to go through suspecting all their friends.
Sure.
And the episode was called Who Stole My Watch? And they said, oh, all right, go ahead. So my dad got the assignment. My parents wrote it. He got in the Writers Guild because
you write something that's going to be produced,
and,
of course. Yeah.
And it just took off from there. And he had a brilliant, and my parents had a really great career from that moment on. They wrote for Dick Van Dyke. And in those days, you weren't like labeled a comedy writer. They wrote for Bonanza. You could write anything. They went Highway to Heaven.
All kinds of stuff.
Yeah, all stuff.
Genres.
Yeah.
That's an amazing story. I like to think and hope that I'm becoming more and more confident, but I'm not even close to at that level. But I guess you don't really see all the work that your parents put it together, all the preparation. He didn't come up with this idea after he parked the car. He didn't come up with what he was going to say before he parked the car.
He worked so hard. I mean, when I started first, writing, after picking up lessons as a kid, he would. One of the things that was interesting about both my father's approach to writing and my parents' collective approach to writing is my father, they when you're writing novels, which is what I write now, which is not what he wrote. He was strictly
TV
scripts.
Yeah.
So having to, in my brain, go from thinking like a script writer to thinking like a novelist was really hard.
Sure.
Which is why my novels are so thin. Because I cannot describe.
You're concise. Yeah. You're used to being concise and getting right to the point.
Exterior.
Exterior.
Street. That's
ext.street. Right. I don't think that's proper novel format.
Instead of 3 paragraphs about what's going on the street, I still find that hard. But anyway, my father had the opinion that, and of course, my father didn't think in opinions. He thought, this is what I think, so this is right.
Yeah, everyone's dad thinks that way.
So he thought that when you went to actually physically write your script or your novel, you had to have the entire novel or script laid out, like your outline had to be so tight that all you had to do was add dialogue. And you had to make sure that that there wasn't a character that tried to steal the story. And I used to think he was nuts. I thought, what the hell does that mean? Until I wrote a book where one of my characters wanted to take my story somewhere else. My mother, that kind of person who thinks in those terms, that you have to have everything plotted out before you, and every time he had a meeting, he would have 4 ideas plotted to that degree. He would have the entire story.
Yeah.
Then he would have one log line, just like one little idea. So there was always something to come back to. Because if they turn down something that's concrete, you're done. But if you have I was thinking about, what about 3 strangers on a train?
Yeah, always have
then
something.
Then they could say, oh yeah, let's look at that. So that was my dad. And that kind of writer is called a plotter. They plot everything. My mom's kind of writer is called a pantser, going by the seat of the pants. Where my mom's was always, I think I'll write about 3 strangers on a train. And she'd start writing and see where the story went.
That's crazy that people, because I always think that everyone who is a professional is more of the plotter, the planner, the outliner. At least I feel like everyone has to do that to some degree. But your mom is really the fly-by to this.
Yeah.
And
sometimes it sucks because sometimes she'll get 100 pages into a something.
Yeah.
And then go,
it's not working.
It's not working. There'll be.
That's why I don't want to be. That's why I'm more like your dad, or would aspire to be.
Yeah.
More like your dad than your mom.
I started out writing like my dad, where I would plot everything out. And I had published 3 novels. I had 3 novels published. The first one took me 4 years. I rewrote it maybe 7 times.
Yeah.
And it's just this little stupid book that's a beach read. So it's I just, by stupid, I don't mean it's.
Yeah, I know, you're not insulted. I know what you mean.
It's just
in the grand scheme, you're in the grand scheme of the world.
You've killed yourself for this book. You've spent 4 years thinking of nothing but this book. And all you want is somebody to take you to the beach and read it and go, wow, that was good. And hope they go, you want to read it, and hand it to somebody else.
Yeah.
That's all you want after you've killed yourself. But I started out, I did my 4 books, plot. And then that was one trilogy. Then I had another trilogy. These are all by Kensington Books. They're my publisher. And I started a book, and I have a deadline. Every 6 months I have to turn in a novel.
That's great.
And I'm
hold you accountable.
Yes, and I'm late. I'm getting late with this.
Well, I'll let you go soon because you got writing to do.
Yeah. Now, luckily, right now I don't. But I was getting late on this book. A deadline breathing down my neck. Both my parents were very, very much. You have a deadline. Somebody's paying you. You meet that.
And and you were how old at this point?
At this point, you've known me.
Yeah, so you're an adult, and so this is the early 2000s, late 90s, or something like that. And your parents, are speaking to their adult child, making sure that they meet their right, especially because it was a writing deadline. I think that they took it extra.
Yes,
personal.
It's you. I mean, I have such great writing habits because of having been raised by writers.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you. Besides, the approach to screenwriting or whatever, difference between your mom and dad. What about rituals or how approach to writing? Did they write in a particular place? Did they put on music? Did they write at a particular time of day?
Yeah.
Did they?
The thing is, when
or your dad specifically,
when you're a writer like they were, or like my dad was, and it's your full-time job, you write when and where you can.
That's right.
I mean, my dad in our house when I was growing up, the house in California in Woodland Hills. Before computers, he had an electric typewriter, and he used to write in the master bathroom because it had a little vanity, like a little desk.
Yeah.
And he could close the door, and he'd be far away from the family. And but he could write anywhere.
The bathroom is also my office. I call it my office, but in kind of a different way, I suppose. That's funny though.
Yeah. And they really did instill, being able to work at home because they both wrote at home. So a lot of people who get into any kind of creative endeavor, or even with technology now, they get jobs where they can work at home, but they don't know how to work at home. But I always knew how to work at home, and I always knew how to write to keep going. I mean, what happens a lot of times with writers who are first starting is they lose focus. They just give up. Giving up wasn't an option in our house. My parents had to write or they, would lose the house.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I could see how that would foster the go-getter.
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to be more like that myself and just be able to write anywhere and work anywhere. And I think I'm doing it. And I think I work at home. I'm working at home all the time. And I think the key for me is just to take breaks.
Yeah.
Just like sit down for an hour, hour and a half, whatever the case may be, and take a 20-minute break. And then just to clear my mind and just to get away from a screen.
Yeah. Well, one thing I find that I do have in common with my parents is that if you take a break, make sure you go back.
Yeah.
That and it's not even just like with my parents, they had to do it because they needed the paycheck. That was their livelihood and they had to do it. But people are relying on you. When you get a contract, it's not just...
It's different. It's different. It changes things.
It isn't. It's you have a moral obligation.
Yeah, like you were saying with your deadlines. And, I do try to be proactive and work on projects and things that people are not asking for me, and there's no deadlines or nothing like that. But when I do have assignments, it does take on, it's just a different, it's just a totally different vibe.
It is, yeah, because there's more people involved than just you.
Yep. And what about into his later life? Your dad's, when did he retire?
Well, my dad had a stroke very young. He was in his mid-50s.
So he worked after that?
He was still working after that. But things slowed down a lot because he physically, his brain could still do it. My parents were divorced by that time.
Yeah.
And my mom actually went on to write for the Bad News Bears, a short-lived TV series. She went on to do that by herself. And then she actually moved back to Philadelphia and ran the media empire for Boeing back there for a while before she retired. So for
the industrial planes in the military and the commercial plane, all that stuff.
Yeah, she
ran the what?
She did all the media.
Okay.
And which was hilarious because she was like this expert on some helicopter. It was hilarious how much my little mom. She
just happened to have for her work have to learn all this information.
Yeah. So, one thing when you're a freelance writer, both my parents were super adaptable to anything that got thrown their way, both collectively and separate.
Yeah, that's a good quality to have.
It is a very good quality, especially in our line of work.
For sure. For sure. So things slowed down for your dad work-wise, and his body started to not be able to handle the rigors and the intensity of life.
He had that stroke thing where he was left-handed. His right hand was paralyzed, but like he used to be one of those people who could type while talking to you, and he could turn stuff out, which I've always...
He could talk to you while typing something else? That's insane.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Oh, I know a couple of people who can do it.
That's crazy. Yeah. No, I can't. Yeah. I don't think I can do that. And he's not looking at the screen.
He's not looking at the screen, and he'd be talking to you, and he'd be writing something. You're going, well, he's just writing gibberish. Right?
Yeah.
And you'd look, and like the margins were there, and everything was crazy. But once he couldn't type with both hands anymore because his hand didn't work. So he actually wrote a couple novels after he retired.
For fun.
Yeah. But he wrote it with one hand. He typed that whole, from being, actually, if I had to type something with one hand, it wouldn't be the end of the world because my typing sucks anyway.
Yeah.
I look at the keyboard anyway. But to go from being somebody who could type without looking while having another conversation to having the discipline to hunt and pack was pretty admirable.
Yeah, that's rough. I wonder if they have anything. I know there's some things you can use with your feet to like play videos and transcribe and things like that. But I don't know about typing with your feet.
Yeah, but none of that existed. Now he could do voice recognition, but that.
Oh yeah. Of course, there's that now.
Yeah.
Use your feet.
Yeah.
What were the novels about? What kind of novels?
His life.
They were
actually called The Smartest Boy in Town.
Oh, I see. It's fiction inspired by himself.
Right.
I see. So he can kind of take some poetic or some some licensing, poetic, licensing or whatever. Did you read them? Do you know the books well? Or
I do. I mean, I haven't read them in years, but
what was your impression? Do you recall the Smartest Boy in Town?
Well, I brought way too much baggage to it.
I see. You're not reading it from a neutral book lover.
My father
perspective
was not an enlightened man when it came to women, and it
came out in the book.
Yeah, I mean, all his women characters were like ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's like
one-dimensional.
He just didn't. He had no. I thank God he had 3 sons, because he just really was clueless when it came to what women were really like.
Yeah, I'm just starting to trying to learn about that myself. It's taking some time. I have mercy on your dad. It's who knows what you guys are thinking.
Yeah.
But to not treat the opposite sex well is not ideal.
The thing is, this is a sweeping statement, but he was a product of his time.
Yeah.
He really was. So he just he was like a sugar and spice. That's what women were,
Yeah, and then I'm sure people in the future will look back on these times and think we're a bunch of assholes.
Yes,
or something
I'm sure,
like that.
Absolutely. Well, he used to always say to me, because I was not cut any slack for being a girl. You'd think it would have worked for me, and it didn't. Because he said, I have 3 standards. I have a standard for men, I have a standard for women, and I have a standard for you. It's like, well, okay then.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think that's a compliment.
It was. It wasn't like...
It's sexist, but it's also a compliment to you.
Because the thing is, you'd think at least you'd be able to slide with, he at least doesn't expect anything of me. He just wants me to grow up and get married. That's all he really expected of most girls and women. But no.
What he needed to do is think about how he feels about you, and then think about how other people have daughters out there, and then they want the same things for and apply that. Yeah. That's tough. Families are interesting.
They are.
And so he wrote these novels, and then what did he?
Then he died.
That's how. There was no ride off into the sunset. He didn't move down to Miami Beach or anything. No. Did he move back to Philly? You said, or he just stayed in California?
He stayed here.
Oh, you got some good sun here.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. He was a very progressive thinker in his way, even though he thinks he was turning to stone and not having any new opinions. He was very interested in technology. He's very interested in what was always happening in the world, and even stuff he didn't really care about, like science and that kind of stuff. He was always up on what was going on.
He always, even into his older age, he always had a zest for life and an interest in what was going on in the world. Even if just the fact that he is the type of person who questions, I don't have any opinions anymore. In some ways, that's an opinion about yourself.
Yeah.
So you're still having opinions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish he was around, because I want to A, debate him about the Industrial Revolution, and B, see if he can type with one hand something, some text, and then while talking to me, looking at me, because I'm not sure I believe the...
But there are other people who can do that.
Yeah.
I bet there are people in our office who can do that.
Yeah. You know what I'll do? I will YouTube this on the internet. Everything's on the internet. You can see people do it.
As a matter of fact, my ex-boss can do it.
Yeah.
And I bet you my husband's paralegal can do it.
I guess it's like singing and playing guitar at the same time.
Exactly.
But the fact that
harmony. How about playing the guitar or playing the piano while singing harmony? That's more what it is.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
but the
that's
fact that it's
what
both
I'm good at.
words, it's interesting.
Yeah.
You're typing words and you're saying words that are different. See, my brain will explode if I try to do that. I think my brain's gonna explode right now. I'll let you go because you got writing. You don't have writing to do. No assignments currently
here's
coming up. Yeah, tell me what you're working on, and you can feel free to promote whatever you're doing, your websites or whatever you got going on.
I just had a book come out, which is Tiny House in the Trees, which is the third book in my Tiny House trilogy, which is on Amazon, is published by Kensington. And I am currently working on my pitch for my next series that I want them to buy. But I really am my commercial writing parent's daughter, is that if I don't have that deadline that I have to honor, I slack off.
Yeah.
I kind of have to have the deadline.
Do you find yourself in between deadlines and when you don't have a specific assignment, like coming up with ideas, or is it is that what it is? You kind of brainstorm.
Yes.
You kind of
yes.
You're very casual about it. Oh, it's just so you can feel like you're doing something, but you're not really hardcore into putting out pages.
Yeah, I'm not hardcore putting out pages, but I do. I do keep, because Kensington always buys 3 books at a time, so I have to kind of have a through line that'll go through all 3 books, but each book you can read by itself.
So you have the stories kind of outlined, although when you're pitching it to...
if something interesting happens in life, you think, I could add that.
Sure. Exciting stuff. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to more of the writing, more everything. Hanging out and seeing you has been fun for sure.
Thank you. Yes, it's been great. Thank you so much.
All right, get out of here.
All right.
Good seeing you. So there you have it. My interview with Celia Bonaduce about her father, Joe Bonaduce. Some pretty crazy stories in there, but some definitely interesting ones as well. Hope you guys enjoyed that interview. It was definitely a lot of fun to record. I still don't believe that someone could be typing words on a computer and be saying some completely different words to someone else at the same time, but that's another conversation for another time. But for now, you can follow the show, People We Love, on Instagram and Twitter. There's also a Facebook page now if you wanted to follow on there as well. People We Love, that's the podcast. It's on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and I'd greatly appreciate it if you guys can take the time to give it an iTunes review, a positive iTunes review that helps the show get noticed some more. Or at least that's what I've heard other podcasters say. So, that's all I got for episode number 5. I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks again. Take care.